Hi, everyone. My name is Julie Hardesty. I'm a metadata analyst at Indiana University, and I'm a white woman with long hair up in a bun wearing glasses. So um, today I'm going to be talking about the controlled vocabularies decision tree. And this is based off a working group that is part of the Samvera metadata interest group. And the working group members here, Don Childress, Gretchen Geegan, Rebecca Patillo, Eric Radio, Lynette Rail, and myself. I just want to thank all of them for a lot of work that was put into this decision tree document. So the decision tree, which is linked in the slide here, it's a Google Doc, is meant to provide guidance for selecting and using controlled vocabularies behind descriptive metadata fields. So the idea here is that it's helpful for the Samvera community, but also potentially in general beyond the Samvera community. We're also specifically wanting to provide information useful to the Samvera community on how to work with controlled vocabularies in Hyrax and Haiku. So what we've done with this decision tree is broken it up into what we're calling levels. And the first level is evaluating any controlled vocabularies that might come with a system that you're using. So identifying things to consider when you're evaluating if those supplied controlled vocabularies work for your needs. We're also defining a little bit of terminology specifically for the decision tree document to distinguish between what we're kind of calling capital C controlled vocabulary, like proper name. That's something that would be called externally, like a linked data source, versus what we're calling a term list, which might be sourced from an authority, but is a list of terms that's stored locally for whatever reason for use in the system. And we also are supplying with each level a Hyrax Haiku example. And so for this first level, looking at supplied vocabularies, we're going through the fields that have supplied terms out of the box. So looking at location and resource type and right statement and license. And those are all Hyrax fields that come with the term list available or controlled vocabulary connected. And the second level, we look at how to manage adding or replacing a controlled vocabulary. And so this starts off evaluating the capabilities of what your system makes possible for you to do. So is it possible to add a vocabulary, or is it possible to change a vocabulary that's supplied? So then we go into ways to look for controlled vocabularies if a change is needed, and tips for evaluating any controlled vocabularies that you might consider. And then in the Hyrax Haiku example for this level, we have a scenario where you're adding a linked data controlled vocabulary to the subject field in Hyrax. And that's using connections from the questioning authority gem. And so we're connecting over to documentation from questioning authority on how to do that. And then the third level is looking at customizing, like editing, modifying, or creating a controlled vocabulary for use. And again, this kind of starts off looking at the system capabilities to see if it's possible to make changes to a supplied controlled vocabulary or term list. And then we go on to include tips on how to go about creating a term list. And this can be a bit of a larger thing if you're getting into an entire taxonomy, but you could also just be dealing with a local term list that you need to supply. And then for the Hyrax Haiku example here, we've offered two examples, one for creating and one for modifying a controlled vocabulary. So the creating one is supposing you need a custom local list of departments or programs within a university to identify a location for an institutional repository collection of items. So putting together that list of terms and how you might add those in. And we link to some Samvera knowledge-based documentation for doing that within Hyrax. And then the other example is modifying the right statement list of terms that's supplied with Hyrax in case you want to do something like remove one of the options that you wouldn't be using, and how you would go about doing that within Hyrax. So the decision tree also includes a kind of a further reading list, and this is where we try to supply some options for investigating how to create a controlled vocabulary if that's something that you're needing to do. And I think this is something where we're open to some suggestions, particularly for controlled vocabulary design. If there are resources you know of that are out there, we're still looking for things to add into this reading list. And also general overview on controlled vocabularies. We have a couple of things, but if anyone has something that they really like, it would be interesting to know what that is to include. And we're also providing information in some appendices to try and help out. And these are, for the most part, Hyrax Haiku related. It's information to identify where supplied term lists are located in the Hyrax code base. and information about the controlled vocabularies that come available with questioning authority when that gem is invoked. So in addition to the decision tree document, we also have a spreadsheet at this point of controlled vocabularies and criteria. And this is still a work in progress. This isn't quite as finished as what we were hoping, but we're wanting to try and create a list that is something that can be collaboratively added to. So we have it as a Google spreadsheet now, but we're contemplating if this is something that would work better as a GitHub repository with a CSV that could be updated. And we're also looking at what information to supply with each list of with each controlled vocabulary option that's listed. Right now, we're showing who maintains it, if there's a stable identifier URI, some information about how often it's updated or the last time it was updated, and the domain, what the controlled vocabulary is about. And our interest here is in trying to provide a list of controlled vocabulary options that may not really be provided elsewhere. So we're looking at ways to include or make more available amplified controlled vocabularies created by marginalized communities that represent that community's interest, and some way to amplify those options that are out there. We also have a second tab in this spreadsheet that's looking at a meta list of controlled vocabularies, and we're not exactly sure if this is super useful, but it might be. It's kind of some places to go where there are already multiple controlled vocabularies available and listed. So we're still trying to figure out what that means and if that's helpful. So feedback on that is also really appreciated. And that's all located and connected up on the CV Decision Tree Working Group Wiki, which is under the Samvera Metadata Interest Group on the Samvera Wiki. So any feedback or comments would be really welcome. Thank you very much.